everybody. Welcome to episode 55 of High Spirits. I'm Ben Larson, and with me as always is my co-host with the most, 𝘚𝘵𝗵𝘳𝘬𝘕. We have an incredible show today for you. We are going to be talking about Georgia and the regulated cannabis market down there, the opportunity, the size of the prize, and the influence of the hemp industry. But before we get there, I'm going to try to get my brain back into work mode. I've been on vacation for a little bit here. Anna Ray, why are you looking at me so funny?
Well, we just got on a video to record this, and you have no hair. So
I have no hair.
What's going on?
Midlife crisis. No, I saw you last Thursday, and I had hair.
Yeah, plenty of hair.
And we were in the middle of my team week. And Friday morning, Ryan Pinsky, our VP of sales, shaved my head in front of everyone. So that's why I now have no hair.
Was there a bet? Like, why did Ryan shave your head?
There was a bet. It was kind of like, yeah, there was a bet. We had some sales targets, and he happened to do a few in a row, call it the hat trick, and now I wear a hat a lot.
Amazing. I love it. Well, I bet your team got a real kick out of it. Are you loving it, or are you going to let the hair come back?
It's something I've done once in my life. I did it once back in college, and I've been wanting to continually simplify my life, and not having to do my hair in the mornings is a nice benefit. And I'm just pulling on reactions from people to see whether it's something that I'll maintain or not. It feels like 50-50 right now. And it's strongly divided between men and women. I find that a lot of my guy friends are like, oh, it look pretty cool. Like, look like an assassin or something. And I'm like, oh, I can rock that. And then my wife doesn't want to be married to an assassin, apparently.
Yeah, I'm going to take your wife's side on this. I think bring the hair back. You had pretty decent hair. We weren't losing it. There was plenty of it. So I'll look forward to whatever you decide and support your decision.
Fair enough.
Yeah.
How was your week?
This week has been really good. Super busy, lots of fun stuff going on with work. But honestly, the highlight of my week, I have to give a shout out. If you're a San Francisco person, you probably have heard of Broke-Ass Stewart. Broke-Ass Stewart has a website on the internet, but he writes about San Francisco Bay Area news. He had a travel show for some time, and he has a column in the newspaper. And Broke-Ass Stewart went to college with me at UC Santa Cruz many years ago. And in 2013, he was trying to do some research on old-time San Francisco. And he reached out to me because he knew that I had grown up there and that I had kind of multi-generations of family in the city. And he interviewed my grandfather in 2013, who was 94 at the time. And it ended up being about 6 months before my grandfather passed away. And he never ended up doing anything with the interview, and I had forgotten about it. And yesterday, he reached out to me and said, hey, I've got this interview from your grandfather. I figure your family would like to have it. And last night, I'm getting chills thinking about it. I got this 94-minute recording of my grandfather telling the story of our family and how we all ended up in California in the 1850s. Through a crazy immigration story that included taking a boat to Panama and walking across what is now the Panama Canal because it wasn't there, and then taking boats up the West Coast to land in California. And it was just really moving and cool. And especially in light of the fact that you and I are making audio content together, it was fun to get to hear the power of audio and how there's so many things that I heard in that recording last night as I was listening to it that I think many people in my family had forgotten. And I just am excited to keep recording, and I want to start doing more recording and making sure that all the stories get told, because it's just so powerful when they come back around. So big shout out to Broke-Ass Stewart for coming around 11 years later and giving this gift to my family. Just wanted to shout that out.
That is so cool. I love that. And yeah, the whole audio format's been really cool. We were getting ready to go on a road trip this past weekend, and my son comes out with his iPad. He's like, "Dad, look what I'm listening to." And it was our most recent episode. And I was just like, I'm like, he's 7 years old. It's just funny that he's listening to our cannabis business news roundup.
Yep. My 7-year-old also says this is his favorite podcast, but he doesn't really listen. Our audience is pretty niche, focused on cannabis. So they're all probably bored hearing our family stories. So let's dive in to the
Let's do it.
cannabis content for the
Yes,
week.
ma'am.
You know, Georgia. I had been seeing our guest post on LinkedIn about his journeys launching cannabis in Georgia, and was really excited to learn more about it and reached out. And I didn't even realize that you had this pre-existing relationship with Judson and that you guys had been friends for many years. So what's
Yeah,
the backstory?
we've been through it. We've been through the ups and downs of the industry. So Judson and I met, I think, back in 2016, and the California market was just getting going. There was a lot of hopes and dreams, and venture capital was flowing in, and then we slowly together realized the realities of the Prop 64 in California, and how hard it was going to be to build businesses. But Judson was leading sales over at Trellis, which was a seed to sale compliance platform. Eventually sold to 𝘭𝘚, which was MJ Freeway and all that. But yeah, not the acquisition story that we were all hoping for, in kind of our tech oriented minds. But it was the start of something beautiful, and really got to kind of be in the trenches alongside Judson, spend some time in the Trellis office. But more than anything, just have that kind of shared origin story when it comes to the cannabis industry. And then we've both gone in our own separate directions, but have remained in touch, and always super happy to see him when we run into each other at MJ Biz and other events.
Awesome. Well, let's bring him on. I'm excited to introduce Judson Hill. He is the Georgia market president for Fine Fettle, which I would say is a MSO, a multi-state operator operating in a couple states, and we'll hear more from Judson about which ones those are. But Judson comes from a long history in cannabis. He worked, like Ben mentioned, at Trellis early on. He's also done a lot in the investment and business development space, and is now hands-on, boots on the ground, operating in Georgia. So Judson, we're super stoked to have you here and to have you teach us and share with us about Georgia.
Appreciate y'all having me.
Awesome. Well, so let's dive in. Can you tell us a little bit about what's going on in Georgia, and what are you doing there?
I can do that. So, what's going on today, which is exciting, is our program actually made the cover of the AJC, which is the Atlanta Journal-Constitution. So, pretty big day for us. And the headline was that the program is growing and it's easier to access cards. So, those are probably our two top goals. And then I'm currently in our third dispensary, which will be opening this coming Friday, which is in Athens, Georgia. Athens is where UGA is, for anyone that doesn't know. Anyone that's not a football fan, UGA is the number one in the preseason, has won the national championship a couple of years in a row before last. So it's pretty cool that we actually have medical cannabis here in Georgia, opening up a new store as we're headed back to school, and just happy to be back in my home state spreading medical cannabis.
But before we get into the cannabis side and the patients and the opportunity there, Judson, you and I met in California. I think a lot of people know you from your time in Southern California, but your roots in Georgia are quite deep. Can you shed a little light on that?
Yeah, definitely. Like you said in the intro, we spent some time in Oakland back in the day, which is fond memories of the glory days of cannabis. But yeah, I was born and raised here in Atlanta, Georgia. Haven't lived here since I was 18, and I was happily settled in SoCal. Not sure when, if ever, there would be a chance to move back for cannabis. My kind of interesting connection to the state and the program is that growing up, my dad was a longtime Georgia state senator. Prior to that, he was a federal prosecutor out of Macon, Georgia, which is conveniently where our cannabis cultivation facility is. So that is ironic justice at its finest. And then I was following the program while he was in office as, I mean, we can get into the details, but it's actually been around since 2015 when my dad was still in office and I was just getting involved in the industry in California. We share the same name. At that time, it was kind of stay out there, don't associate your name or our name with cannabis, but also kind of picking my brain as they were starting to put together the regulations. So yeah, I guess the long story short is I've been following the program from afar for the past 9 years, and can get into the details of what's going on here in Georgia now. But here we are finally actually opening up stores, selling cannabis to people in Georgia, and I'm happy to be involved at the ground level.
Yeah, it's funny. I can imagine being your father and hoping that you don't become too popular and start showing up in search engine results.
Yes, definitely. There was a case to be made for that, but conveniently we're actually working together now. And right after this, I'll be hopping on a Department of Health public hearing with my dad, working on the behalf of the patients of Georgia. So people come around over time.
That's amazing.
Cool. Well, let's talk about the patients of Georgia. So I know Georgia has a population of 11 million. It's the 8th largest state in the US by population. And so how many patients are in Georgia today that are eligible to come to a dispensary?
Yeah, great question. I mean, according to the AJC, the number is at 23,000. It's been, I guess, privately held, but I'm pretty sure we're right about 23,000, and it's grown at a little over 1,000 patients a month for the past 6 or 7 months since I've been back. So despite seemingly low numbers, I feel optimistic that one, there's a huge opportunity with 11 million people and we're just getting started, but also that it is growing pretty quickly over the past few months, all things considered. Especially when we were talking earlier about kind of the growth rates of Florida as a comparison, where Florida didn't have 25,000 patients until they added flower. We still don't even have the ability to sell flower. We got a lot of hurdles. So I think we're in a pretty good spot for how early on we are in the program.
Yeah, interesting. Also beating out the early numbers in Texas. So
Yeah.
which was
Hannah Ray and I were talking about that program as well. But yeah, I think Texas, Florida, Georgia, I mean, similar states and large southern states, and also similar program structures of sorts. Hopefully we head more the direction of Florida.
So you mentioned not being able to have flower. What is kind of the makeup of the products that are being offered in the shops, and kind of what's the next big growth mechanism for you after that? Is it allowing for flower, or is it creating more qualifying conditions for the cards? You know, like what's kind of like holding up the growth?
Yeah, great question. I mean, I guess I can kind of lay the framework of the program as a whole and then answer that. But there's 6 vertically integrated operators. Fine Fettle, we're actually the 3rd group to market, so there's only 3 of us even in operation. We obviously have a cultivation, like I mentioned, down in Macon, Georgia, which is about an hour and a half south of Atlanta. Grow our flower there, real full THC, beautiful flower. We also have extraction and then manufacturing there. So what's holding up the program is it's still called a low THC oil program, not really the sexiest name from a marketing perspective. But the cool part is we are able to make products. Here's some of our capsules, bombs. We have troches, which some may say is similar to a gummy. But anyways, there's some, I guess, regulations around what type of products we can make and even how we can advertise them. But those are, 20 milligram ingestible products, full THC. But there's just a lot of nuance, I guess, in the naming of the program, and then the confusion that causes across the state with just a general lack of awareness. And then for people that do find out about it, they say, why would I want to go get a medical card to get low THC oil? when, I mean, I grew up in Georgia. Cannabis has been around for a while. I'm sure people know where to find it. And then also, you know, to the other point of the hemp conversation, over the past handful of years, you know, hemp is proliferated the state of Georgia. Obviously, I think some are good actors, some not so much. But the point being, there's smoke shops in every shopping center, and you can walk in and you see all these California branded products. And I see mushroom vapes, I see all types of craziness. So it's just kind of trying to educate people about why go get safe tested product from Fine Fettle and, you know, what exactly it is we can do.
So it's a big move to go into a state and set up operations, build the assets and the infrastructure that you all are building, when there are so many restrictions, and at the same time, there's a long-term vision that has to be baked into something like that. You talked about Florida and how Florida started also with a low THC program, and then the patient counts started to really increase exponentially as soon as form factors were added to the program to make it more competitive with the guy down the street that someone's getting their flower from, or now the hemp dispensary down the road. I think that there's got to be some kind of internal discussions with you all at Fine Fettle about that. Like, how do you see market growth? What are your expectations in terms of kind of short-term wins versus what you think the market is worth ultimately to you and the impact you can have?
Yeah, I mean, we definitely discussed that, and I guess I didn't really address that part of Ben's question, but the immediate goal would be progressing to just a true medical program outside of, you know, the low THC oil, as I said. So whatever, not having a 5% THC oil cap, which is how the regulations read. Again, volume may not be considered in that. So we're able to create products that have 5, 10, 20 milligrams of THC, but it's pretty confusing to explain that. So first step, and again, to your point on Florida, we saw this where Florida was another state that had a low THC oil program at first in 2014. Then in 2016, it became a full strength THC. And what I see as a plus for us is they only had 26,000 patients then, and that was at full THC, versus we have 26,000 with the low THC oil. So I think if we can remove that name, get a true medical program that then allows us to open up to do things like flower and vape and what have you, because as long as it's called a low THC oil program, no one wants under 5% flower or vape. I guess to the volume component, not to get too scientific, but you can get creative with how much 5% THC oil you put in a capsule or a topical or a gummy that makes it a full, you know,
Full strength experience.
Full strength experience, exactly. Yeah. So that would be step one.
And so, you know, you're no stranger to making policy change, especially you told the story about your dad being involved early on just from his seat in the legislature. What is the environment like in Georgia and the appetite for actually changing the program? Like, what is the likelihood that this is going to happen in the next year, or is it going to take 3? How do you look at it?
Yeah, no, I mean, that's a great question. And I think that the root of it is that the South is obviously slow on cannabis. And while there has been this program, there hasn't really been much support for its growth. So it's kind of interesting for me, obviously coming from California. You look at, you know, larger states that have gotten a lot of press, good or bad, over the past few years, like a New York or Fine Fettle. I mean, we're based in Connecticut and also in Massachusetts. But point being, with all of those states, despite all the issues with the regulations, I think the intent at least was they were looking to create a program. Maybe people had good ideas, bad ideas, or were trying to progress it. Georgia, on the other hand, I don't know if there is a genuine intent to create or expand a program at the legislative level. To the point on my dad, I mean, the original genesis of it was back in 2015. I'm sure we all remember stories in a lot of states when, like Colorado and only a few states had cannabis, of parents traveling to these states to get medicine for their children that had epilepsy and things of this nature. And it was a pretty brash way of doing it. But, you know, back then when my dad was in office, they would bring these families in and children would be having seizures on the floor of the Senate. And that was kind of the brute force way of saying, you guys need to at least have a medical program. And fortunately, they at least were able to recognize, okay, we need to have a medical program. And that's kind of what created where we're at now. But to advance it, and like with Florida in mind, I think it's a great analogy for us of how the state and the program can grow. But when you're thinking from a legislative level and Florida's on the ballot to go recreational in the fall, what they may say is that's exactly what we don't want. It's kind of, you give a mouse a cookie as the program starts, and then you add this and you add that, and then all of a sudden it's on the ballot for recreational. So yeah, we kind of have to work to change the stigma around cannabis and, start with really the medical focus of the program and just expand from there. But yeah, I don't think there's any rush from the legislative level for there to be flower or anything that resembles a recreational program at the current.
This is interesting, right? Because there's a lot of conversations about the dynamics between cannabis, hemp, the legislature, and here it seems like there's a very strong cannabis stigma, right?
Yes.
I'm curious as to how people are perceiving this proliferated hemp market in Georgia that you were mentioning in comparison to some of the other southern states, because Kentucky and Tennessee, these southern states are ratifying the hemp marketplace and creating a pathway for it while maintaining that cannabis is still the devil's lettuce. Kind of breaks the brain. What is the sentiment that you're coming up against in the Georgia legislature?
Yeah, I guess just by what I said before of it seemingly not optimistic for them allowing the program to progress. I'm obviously here because I believe that we will progress it. But on the hemp side and how I see it all related is there was actual pretty large legislation that passed in the spring here in Georgia related to hemp specifically. And that was a lot to curtail, I guess, this proliferation of unsafe, untested product. And as we've obviously talked about a bunch of times over the years, Ben, and I am a supporter of anyone that does cannabis the right way on either side, hemp or regulated. And I don't think there should be any fighting amongst the two.
Mm-hmm.
The hard part on the hemp side is just that when you walk into these smoke shops, most of what you would see is not safe or well done. So that regulation was going to basically require anyone that's selling the hemp products to have a retail license. And again, compared to what we have to do on the regulated cannabis side, it's pretty easy. It's like $1,000 license, but at least put these processes in play where every part of the supply chain will have to have a license. And then the main thing is they're making it explicit that you can't have any smokable hemp products. They're disallowing Delta-8 and all of these things. And that just went into effect over the summer, and they're giving them a 90-day grace period until they start enforcing it. Point being, all of these smoke shops should be getting shut down to some degree, or their supply chain getting turned upside down, at least from the vendors they're purchasing product from that aren't doing it the right way. And all that to be said is I would like to think that presents the medical cannabis program as the safe, obvious place to go to get access to these stronger products, sell hemp beverages, edibles, more low dose products through the smoke shops or through the liquor stores or the grocery stores, and make the dispensaries your go-to for that stronger THC product. And then that would open up the argument for adding flower and vape, because then you need to provide some place for patients to access flower and vape, as I think most people understand that a lot of medical patients find that to be the most effective medicine.
Sure.
I have to say it's pretty wild to be thinking about the stigma that you all are facing in pushing this program forward in Georgia, just considering that politically there's a lot of discussion that cannabis has now become a bipartisan issue, and even right next door in Florida, there are polls that are suggesting that it's possible that the adult use ballot measure will pass, and they're going to need over 60%. So I think it's hopeful that the good word will spread and that Georgians will become more open-minded, and it will create a good environment to build some new like economic opportunities and business opportunities for companies like Fine Fettle and for the investments that y'all are making. Notice I said y'all there, to really pay off. I'm curious, like what that looks like for Fine Fettle in Georgia. Like what's the footprint of your cultivation? How many employees do you guys have right now? How many are you thinking you're going to hire? Like, yeah, for the people who live and work in Georgia, what kind of opportunity is this from a business opportunity? What's the talent pool like?
I mean, honestly, like as a Georgia native, that's really what gets me the most excited, is like the ability to give back to the community and also empower a lot of folks that have been, damaged by the war on drugs. There's a real dichotomy in Georgia. I'm sure most people across the country are probably familiar that we're a pretty hot button swing state across the board politically right now. And to your point about, the stigma, I think we talked about this before, but I would plug all of our mutual friend Hirsch Jane in the episode that he did earlier this year to talk about red state weed, where I see optimistically that traditionally more Republican leaning states in the South or across the country are a bit more laissez-faire from a regulatory point of view and business friendly. So I see it as a real plus once we get past the stigma. And I frankly think, people on both sides of the aisle smoke cannabis. It's just unfortunately maybe the more right-leaning have been a bit closeted about it. And this is me speaking firsthand. So yeah, I believe that obviously they're cannabis friendly, they see the benefits, but it just has been taboo to say that out loud. And that's really what we have to get past. I'm confident we will. And then once we do, I think the regulatory framework is frankly better in a state like Georgia. I mean, Georgia, is actually the most well-run state financially from a surplus at the government level, which is an interesting thing to think about that makes it hard for us to lobby whatever. The tax revenue is a huge driver in a lot of states. Georgia's response is kind of, we're good on taxes and we don't, need your revenue, which is like, okay, I applaud you. I'm a Georgian, that's not what they're saying in California or New York. But I think it's just like going to be a lot more business friendly for us, even like working with the GMCC, which is our regulatory body. They've been very collaborative versus some other states that I've worked in where it's more kind of, looking to poke holes in things, looking to cause problems. So yeah, I'm really optimistic that I think it will be a huge boom for the economy. Georgia, I mean, agriculture is like a huge industry here. Obviously, cannabis is agriculture in my mind. So we're trying to align ourselves with the Georgia Grown movement and help, revitalize some of these, rural areas of Georgia over time. Right now, we have to grow indoors, so there's not much revitalization of farm land, but we have a 50,000 square foot cultivation footprint to answer your question in Macon. Our facility overall is like a couple acres, and that includes, extraction, production, all of the things. So we have enough space and production capability to service the whole 11 million people in Georgia right now if we were to be able to do so.
I bet you're creating a lot of new jobs too at the same time.
Yeah, well, like I said, we're up here about to open our third store in Athens. We're, doing interviews, hiring folks. So pretty cool. I mean, retail is a huge hiring mechanism for us as we're able to open up. I guess we didn't even touch on this, like the retail structures were vertically integrated, but we're allowed to open 5 dispensaries to start. So each of the 6 groups got 5. This will be our third that we're about to open within 6 weeks. So it's been quite busy for us the past couple of weeks. And then after 5, every new 10,000 patients in the program, we're able to open an additional dispensary. So it's a pretty unique and I think smart structure where it's like similar to Florida, but Florida didn't have that 10,000 mechanism. So it kind of let someone like a True Leaf run off and make 140 stores. This kind of keeps the playing field level between the operators where each of us gets a new store every 10,000 patients.
So, okay, so 6 licensees, 5 stores each, 30 stores total.
If all we're doing it, but
if all of them do it. And then every 10,000 patients that you add on top of that, each one of the licensees gets to open a new store? Is that
Correct. And it's
okay?
every 10,000 past 25,000. A lot of numbers there, but yeah, starting at 25,000, which we're about to pass, then every 10,000 from there, each licensee would get a new retail location.
And is it
Interesting.
similar to Florida with the vertical integration that you have to sell everything that you produce, or is there ability to do wholesale transactions between the licensees?
That's a great question. There is the ability to do wholesale transactions between the licensees, considering we just opened our first store 3 weeks ago, and there's only been 2 that were open before that. That has not occurred yet. But I mean, I think it'll be an interesting opportunity. I mean, we have, I guess, different, like some groups make a transdermal patch where some people make a topical. You could make a case of, I'll carry your patch, you carry my topical, or we could create different levels of, sub brands within Fine Fettle, for example. So yeah, we've been thinking about that avenue. No one has made the first move to carry the other person's product yet, considering how small the market is.
So with each benchmark of patients added, more dispensaries coming from the existing licensees. What about new licensees? What are some of the mechanisms for that, or are those yet to be identified?
There's no mechanism written into place. 𝘱𝑗 and I were talking about it a bit before, but I mean, it's really at the discretion of the state and kind of just, I mean, I'm biased, clearly, I would admit, but from a supply demand standpoint, it's funny because there's 6 licensees and they consider 2 of us large, which is Trulieve and Botanical. That's why they were able to open first, and we didn't even get into why, but the RFP was issued in 2020, and then 6 groups won. Everyone else decided to sue. That was 4 years later, and finally we were able to start, Trulieve Botanical Science started opening last year, and then our lawsuits were resolved. We all won 40 times over. But anyways, we just opened up stores this year. We have 50,000 square feet. The other 2 groups have 100,000 square feet. So all I'm getting to is between the 3 of us, we can grow a lot of cannabis and produce a lot of products, yet the patients aren't there yet. So like, why would you introduce more licenses that have to invest into the vertical integration? And I don't even think it's, really worth someone doing that at this point in time. And that's probably why the other 3 groups haven't even started, is they're frankly kind of putting it on us to build the patient base and looking to join in on the program. So long way of saying no mechanism yet, but
yeah, I was when you were stating the numbers, I was trying to do quick mental math to see if it made economic sense, like dividing up 10,000 patients among 6 licensed operators for new dispensaries. Like, it seems like it dilutes pretty quickly. 𝘱𝑗, like, as you look at these different marketplaces, how do these numbers stack up as far as being able to support dispensaries?
Yeah, that's what's so interesting. You're reading my mind, so thank you. I think that what's at play here is this funny dynamic between the idea of free market capitalism, which is kind of an overarching tenet of the American kind of economic approach to business and entrepreneurship, versus these state by state limited cannabis opportunities that are absolutely not free market capitalism, because we have these closed system opportunities where what Fine Fettle sells or grows in Georgia, they're not able to sell in their own store in Connecticut. And so there's a very closed opportunity. And as we've seen lots of different states come on, the states that have chosen a more free market path, meaning not having a limit to the amount of licenses, have seen a massive amount of licensees come into the market. And then those businesses have really struggled to get to a place of even financial sustainability, let alone profitability. And that's why time and time again, the winners seem to be in the states that have had strict license limits. And the challenge with that is it creates a have and a have nots of, like, there are people that want to be able to participate in the market and they can't because they don't get one of these prized limited licenses. But I think the upside is that it's a lot more likely that the investments that companies are making in markets like Georgia will hopefully pay off because there's not so many licenses. That said, with a potential right now of 30 dispensaries and less than 30,000 patients, yeah, I would say that that doesn't sound like enough patients to support 30 dispensaries. But Judson pointed out there isn't yet 30 dispensaries. There's not even close to that. There's less than 10. And my guess is that all of this work that we're all doing, like talking about this right now, but even better, this article that you said on the front page of an important news publication in Georgia, like we're going to see more patients get into this program. And they're going to want to go to these dispensaries, and the dispensaries will start to find more success. So yeah, that's my take. Does that answer your question?
Yeah.
I mean, I definitely agree with you. And I mean, that's why, like I said, we're opening our third store now within 6 weeks, and then we're going to kind of pause and operate those 3 locations because, I mean, prior to this, I think Ben may have referenced it, or you, but I helped start up a lending firm specific to cannabis companies where we were originally in California. And I guess I got a very interesting point of view where my background is in business development, but I quickly learned about the risk side to consider within everything and not growth at all costs. And I mean, clearly why we're here in Georgia, I'm from here, but I saw that the best opportunity was quickly becoming in these newly emerging states. And that's where I started to focus my attention. Because I mean, it's a noble cause to give licenses to everyone. But like, as we've seen in, again, California or New York as examples, and also like when Ben and I were in Oakland early on, I mean, that was kind of the birthplace of the social equity movement, which like in theory, I love, but also firsthand, I saw people, you know, invest all they had to build these businesses to never have a fighting chance. So I think, you know, like good intention, not to keep playing on the devil's lettuce pun, but good intention is often, you know, the road to hell. So I see the case that more successful markets have been done in a limited license state. And while it might be nice to think, you know, free markets win over, I've actually seen a lot of bad things and, you know, lost livelihoods come from California, for example. So I think that's definitely something to be considerate of.
So it sounds like the consensus is not lots of more licenses in Georgia anytime soon, is what it sounds like.
Yeah, I mean, I think for now, there was a case, obviously, like I said, everyone that lost sued, such as America. There's no participation trophies here. Fortunately, those were resolved, and let's just, you know, actually start selling medical cannabis and see how the program works as is. I think the greater focus needs to be on making it easier for patients to access the program itself. And like a lot of the work we're doing is, even for example, right after this, we're going on a hearing with the Department of Health, where one of the positive legislations for our program was that cards were supposed to now be mailed or emailed to patients as of the last legislative session. But the regulatory body, Department of Health, has decided not to do so. So we're having to even fight for law that was passed, where again, as long as it's difficult to get a card and patients don't even know about it, they're going to go to other avenues. And I really just want to drive, you know, people to get safe, tested product and make it easier for people to get in the program rather than worry about adding new licenses when there's plenty of cannabis in the state.
So everything, and forgive me if I've misheard this, but everything, each one of the licensees is vertically integrated.
Correct.
You can transfer product from one to another, but the concept of like a role player license hasn't yet been introduced, where say a beverage company can come in and manufacture and distribute to all the license holders.
Correct. Right now, there's just the 6, and you have to be vertically integrated.
Okay, so there's some work to be done there in the future if we want the ability to have brands be able to come in and do stuff like that. We've talked about beverage in the past. Where do you imagine beverage entering the chat? Do you imagine it eventually being sold in dispensaries, or is this something where the low dose hemp channel continues to exist and we see broad distribution of it? Where do you imagine us seeing this product?
Yeah, I mean, both personally and from a business perspective, I love the beverage opportunity as we've talked about. And I think, I mean, if you go right now into certain liquor stores or gas stations or what have you, the hemp beverages are being sold. And now that this legislation that I had mentioned about hemp products is in effect, it crystallizes that they are allowed. We are actually in a rulemaking period on that hemp legislation as well. I think I might have shared with you, they're proposing a 5 milligram cap. But I guess the point is, like, now that it is at least crystallized, a lot of the large, AB, Budweiser, Miller Coors distributors are starting to look at and carry these products in Georgia and distribute them into the liquor stores, which I think, I mean, I love to see. I'm sure from all the hemp beverages, from a 𝘵𝘅𝘅 point of view, it's a great opportunity. So that is happening. Where it fits in with Fine Fettle, I mean, I think for us to think about, I mean, there's definitely a lot of regulated cannabis operators that are launching products into the hemp market because they see that opportunity. Personally, I'd love to see, maybe a tea or something of that nature in Georgia where we could get some exposure to that. There's no beverages allowed in our dispensaries yet, though, to answer your question on that front.
I need to connect you with Damian Webster at 𝘏𝑝𝘀. They have some pretty fantastic infused teas.
I love Damian and I love 𝘏𝑝𝘀. So yes.
There we go. Well, that's really cool. And there's an opportunity still to get the higher dose products into the dispensaries. We see Uncle Arnie's and 𝘬𝐷𝘬𝘕, really killing it here in California with their 100 milligram offerings. And so,
yeah, I mean, I think for us that would be in the line of new products that we need to add. But I mean, a side note, I think you may know Tyler Cook, who was from Nug back in the day.
Yeah.
It was awesome coincidence where we've known each other in California for a while. He now heads up our product formulation in Macon. So I thought it was cool. He moved from the Bay Area to South Georgia. And I mean, he's like, I think back in the day in Oakland, they called him the Willy Wonka of cannabis. But
yeah.
He's a trained chef. He can make everything from hot chocolate powder to what have you. So
he was the Willy Wonka of Michigan for a little while. He had a brief stint at Skymint, and I know he created a lot of product up there. One of my favorite products that he created was the Nug Pops. It's like kind of a recreation of the Otter Pops.
Well, we're trying to potentially launch those in Georgia as tincture pops.
Tincture pops.
we have a very creative product formulator, I guess is the point, and working to see what we can do to launch cool new products both within the current regulation, and then there needs to be progress as well. I mean, flower and vape we talked about, but to do more traditional beverage, we can do like a drink additive, which I mean personally, like I said, I'm a big fan of the hemp beverages. I also am not drinking alcohol, so I love like the idea of having a little drink additive, which you could do within our medical program. So beverage definitely has a place. I mean, both within our dispensaries and in Georgia as a whole right now. Like I said, I'm friends with some of the alcohol distributors, and they're actively bringing in brands right now to start selling through the liquor store channels and such.
Gotcha.
Well, as we're getting closer to the hour, I'm wondering if there's something that we haven't talked about so far that's really important for people to know about Georgia who are listening and are curious about what this opportunity is all about, something that you're optimistic and excited about. Just want to make sure that there's nothing that we're missing here.
I mean, I think we've talked on a lot, but what I'm most excited about again is just the awareness that we're bringing to the program, and really, I mean, getting patients medical cannabis is a cool thing that I frankly don't know if I've been a part of in all my almost a decade of cannabis. Has mostly been in, I mean, the end of the California medical market, like Ben mentioned, which was a bit different than the medical market here. So it's really just a cool experience to partner with the advocacy groups. We do a lot of work with veterans, for example, that have PTSD. They came back from mostly serving in, the Middle East, went to the VA, got hooked on opioids, and fortunately some of them have found cannabis. And you hear this time and time again. I mean, that's just one example, but I would really like to highlight the patients themselves. And it's just been super cool and rewarding, especially here in Georgia, to work with, other Georgians that really find the need for this. I mean, I believe in recreational access as well personally, but I think we often forget about the medical angle, or at least I personally wasn't as thoughtful about it prior to kind of being in this super regulated medical market. And it's very cool that cannabis provides that, you know, comfort and healing to people outside of also a fun time to people as well.
It is an interesting dynamic between medical and recreational. We've been talking to a lot of doctors lately, and they're having a hard time recommending products in the recreational markets or even outlets to go and ask for them. I know there's great brands out there, and I think we talked about this a little bit on the last show, but having a true medical market to kind of lay a foundation that this is medicine and that here's like some high quality products that can be used as medicine, I think it is really interesting. As you mentioned, the California medical market was basically recreational. I think my doctor, my teledoctor was like on the beach when I talked to him, and you know, I had my card 5 minutes later, and you know, my back pain has gone away.
No, I mean, like you said, I also got my medical card in Venice Beach back in the day. And I mean, personally, I was I was T-boned by a semi truck 14 years ago, and I do have back pain. And I told that doctor, and he was like, yeah, next, here's your card. I did also just get my card in Georgia. Actually, I got the call earlier this week, so that's exciting as well for intractable pain. But yeah, I mean, I think there's just a variety of conditions. I mean, some maybe seemingly I am a healthy life otherwise, but some people like really need the medicine every day, and it's just super powerful to see that firsthand. And like our business is a lot of partnering with the doctors. Both, it is cool in Georgia. I mean, what I would like to highlight for people is telemedicine is an option, so it's actually quite easy of a process to get a card. You could go online, set up an appointment probably tomorrow, have a 15-minute consultation, and if you're qualified, get your card. But then also we partner with traditional doctors. So there's like the medical cannabis doctors, but there's, you know, pain doctors, neurologists, all types of more traditional specialists, which have patient base, and they're starting to see how they can incorporate cannabis into their, you know, healing programs for their patients. And it's just cool to be able to educate them, but also learn from, you know, there isn't much research out there, but some doctors have found a way to get very informed on it, and it's cool to learn all of that side of the science.
So I do have a question then, following on that, as it relates to the product positioning that you guys are bringing to market.
Yep.
In Connecticut and Massachusetts, where Fine Fettle is also operating, those are adult use markets, but that still, I think both of them maintain medical markets as well, kind of in parallel to the adult use in the stores, like dual use programs. But in light of Georgia having such a medical focus and a patient focus, are you just basically bringing the products that fit the market to Georgia that the company already was making, or are you repositioning the way the products are described or the way the directions are? Like how are you adjusting, if you are, or if there is a need to better suit a more medical focused kind of audience?
Yeah, I mean, I guess the short answer is they're brand new products we've made specific to Georgia. I mean, some SKUs may overlap, and Fine Fettle, we're based in Connecticut, and I mean, frankly, why I think we won the license down here is Connecticut did start it out as a medical market, and it was very pharmaceutical focused, where even still you have to have a pharmacist in every dispensary in Connecticut. So like Fine Fettle comes from a very medical way of looking at it, and we have SOPs and processes within, you know, our retail structure that trains the team that way. But we make our products clearly here in Georgia. I referenced Tyler. And while there's a small patient base, we can really get that feedback of what's working, what's selling, what do people want. So, you know, we're making new products on the fly based on the response and the request of the patients, which is really cool. And again, the bomb is my favorite topical, menthol. So yeah, we can basically come up with whatever is needed and whatever, you know, we're getting the best response to, and it's cool to be able to be that nimble, I guess.
Yeah, in my last question really goes back to the patients and just the qualifying conditions. Are there any like low hanging fruit that you see as not yet a condition but needs to be?
Yeah, I mean, I guess on the condition front, you could always expand them, or there's a case to be made to reduce them and say, allow doctors to recommend cannabis at their discretion. Because I frankly think the list of conditions is proven to be somewhat arbitrary, is kind of the issue with the list of conditions.
Mm-hmm.
Intractable pain is 50% of our patient base. And what I've seen in most medical markets is pain is the lion's share of the patient base. PTSD makes up the other 25. So point being, if you don't have any pain or trauma, congratulations, you might not be a patient, but otherwise most people have some sort of pain and trauma. And then the more severe conditions like, AIDS, end-stage cancer, MS, these are also listed out. And I mean, there are a handful of patients, but that's a smaller share. I think things like, insomnia, anxiety, that would be great low-hanging fruit to add that would capture more folks. But again, kind of the pain and the PTSD category ends up being kind of the gateway that most people qualify for if they have any types of ailments, often overlap with those two.
Makes sense. Yeah.
Well, Judson, I want to thank you for coming on and sharing about the journey in Georgia so far. I think that we're going to keep paying attention. I think that there's a massive opportunity. I hope that the growth that we both believe could follow the path that we've seen in Florida and Georgia creates the opportunity that you guys are looking for, and that there's just a tremendous amount of success ahead. I want to move us to the last call, and this is our chance for you to make a lasting impression on our audience. So, Judson, what's your last call?
Well, I appreciate y'all having me, and I didn't give Ben a shout out, but I love the assassin luck. So nice.
Yeah.
I mean, I kind of hit on it before, but I would just recommend, anyone spreading the word that Georgia does have a program. And it is as simple as going online. You can Google Georgia Medical Cannabis Card, and the call to action is really just to go out and get your medical cannabis card if you are a Georgia patient. Until there's more numbers in the program, there's only so much progress that we can make. So it's kind of a chicken or the egg thing where a lot of people say, hey, I want flower, so until then I'm not interested. And it's really, I guess, kind of a collective unifying, amongst all cannabis advocates, the hemp side of the industry, the regulated side, the flower smokers, the medical people. I think we need to have a united voice to make any change at a legislative level, whether that be local in the state or at the federal. And as long as there's infighting or a lot of conflicting nonsense, people will happily tune us out. So if I've learned anything, trying to get things done at the political level, you have to be succinct and clear with your messaging. And I think we should all try and do that in the cannabis industry.
Oh, man. Feeling that on so many levels right now, whether it's California, the Hill, Missouri, you name it. We're going through it. But Judson, really appreciate it. It's been awesome to be alongside you on your journey, and really happy to see you back home and doing the good work in Georgia of all places. If you asked me about the opportunity in Georgia back in 2016 when we met in California, it would have felt like a long ways away,
Got my Chick-fil-A in hand. We're here.
There you go.
Georgia, getting ready for football season, so it's a real thing.
Amazing. All right, man. Well, until next time, we'll talk to you soon.
Awesome. I appreciate y'all.
Thanks.
Bye.
Anna Ray, another one in the bag. That's Georgia. Check it off the box. Where are we going next?
I love it. I am excited about Georgia. Atlanta is such a cool city, and there's so much culture that's born there. And I think that there's going to be waves that come out. I think there'll be cool brands that come out of Georgia eventually, but that's for a later show.
Yeah. And more importantly, what do you think? Have you gotten used to it yet, or does the hair still need to come back?
Not used to the assassin look. I support you, whatever choice you choose to make in your life, but I'm gonna also take sides with the wife on this one.
All right, all right. I'm keeping tally. What do you think, folks? Whether it's about Georgia or my hair, ring in, leave a comment, share if your friends are interested about Georgia, less about my hair. Thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you so much for tuning in. As always, for sharing, liking, subscribing, doing all the things. Thank you to our teams at 𝘊𝘢𝘳𝘬𝘕 and 𝘫𝘀 for keeping the lights and mics on. And yeah, thank you for keeping us going and keeping the guests coming. And if you want to be on the show, if you think you have something important to say, reach out. It's not always going to be a yes, but it might be. So until then, remember, folks, stay curious, stay informed, and most importantly, keep your spirits high. Until next time, that's the show. All right, I'm going to find out how to get us out of here. There we go. There's the button and music.